Well, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we are using the Mpesa Daraja API using Django and React Native to make real-world mobile applications for both Android and iOS. In the last video, we were looking at how we could get the callback URL and to obtain the data from the Safaricom servers. In this video, we are going to see how we can manipulate the data that we've received and actually save it to our database. So going back to what we did in the previous video, so we did set up the URL, which is now the callback URL, in order to receive the information from Safaricom, in which we did. And we also set up a fast simplistic view in which we were able to capture the data. So we wrote something like this in our views, and when we defined this function called create, we did print out the request.data. And we received something close to this one towards the end of last video. But there's only one problem with this. So we were taking this approach where we've written our confirmation API view, which we are using create API view. And the pure reason as to why we have the create function, it's because of the format that Safaricom sends us the data. As you can see, it's a JSON format. The only problem we have with this is that it has dictionaries inside the dictionary, so it's not a straight out JSON format as to what you'll usually have when posting yourself maybe from your models. So ideally, if Safaricom would have given us this information in this format, which is pretty straightforward. So you see here they've given us a body, and inside this body we have another dictionary called STK callback, and inside that we have another dictionary where we have merchant request ID, and inside that we have another key called callback metadata, which inside has another key and value, and the value is an array. So this becomes quite difficult. You cannot just save it. Otherwise, if Safaricom would have sent us data in this format, which is basically everything here, I've just extracted the merchant request ID to that. Checkout request ID in this case is supposed to be this value, which is here. Resort code and everything here. If we were to get into this format, then definitely we wouldn't have done the def create method. We could have just written these 3 lines and it would have saved. But since we are receiving data in this format, we need to do some manipulation and extract this data ourselves. And we do that by defining this def create method so that we can extract the data. And that's what we'll pretty much be doing in this video. So we are going to take this data and we are going to extract some of the values. Then we are going to write a model about it, first of all by identifying the type of data that we have. So for example, you can see here that the merchant request ID is a string because it has a quotation, same as checkout request. Result code is a digit, which is 0, so it needs to be an integer field. We can see here the amount is 1.0, so this is different from this, so this is supposed to be a float field, and so on forth and so forth, and we are going to see in the course of this video. So we are going to extract the data and write our models, and then that will be it. So coming to the code, this is what we had. I'm going to maximize this. So we need to extract this information. So the way I do it, the first thing we need is the merchant request ID. So I can call it this anything. I can just call it merchant, need to spell correctly, merchant request ID, and I'm going to say this is equals to, so the way I'm going to call it, I'm going to say is equals to request.data. So when we say is equals to request.data, this needs to be request. This is the value we are going to get, but if I come here and extract the information of body, so that means you are going to remain with this STK push. So then I'm going to come inside the STK callback, so I'm going to say to call this. So if we come inside the request.data, then we extract out the body, we get this, then we extract out the STK callback, so we are left with this, I believe. So then we are remaining with a dictionary, then I call merchant request ID. like that. So if we call like that, this is going to be merchant request ID. And just to test that this work, I'm going to come here and say print merchant request ID. Then I'm going to say this should be merchant request ID. Okay, I'm going similarly to copy out this one, and I'm going to extract out the checkout request ID. It should be pretty much I'm going to call this checkout. The only difference is that towards the end, instead of merchant request ID, this will be that. So again, I can copy this, and now we are coming to extract out the result code. So I'm going to say, again, you can call it this anything that you want. What is important is what is on the right side, and this one will be, to copy that, and replace it there. So similarly for result description, I'm going to copy out that one and say result description. Copy this. Okay, now it's get trickier because this one, we came to the body, the STK callback, we had this and this. So when we want now the amount, this becomes a bit tricky. Because we need to go inside the callback metadata, then we go inside the item, and inside there we have this array which we need to extract some information from. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to say I need the amount. So I'm going to come and say amount is equals to, I'm going to copy this, but instead of result description, we go into inside the callback metadata. When we go inside the callback metadata, we get this. So inside that, we go inside item, and after going inside item, we get an array. So the way we call an array is usually called by index, and the way we call that is I call the first object, which is the amount. So I'm going to say 0, meaning we select this. Again, this is how you call an array. It's by index, so we start with 0, which is the first one. If I do this, then I'm going to remain with this dictionary. Then I go inside the value. This should be value, so I say I want the value. So to test if this one works, I'm going to say print amount, and I say this should be an amount. So similarly, if I want to get the Mpesa receipt number, I'm going to come here and paste this. I'm going to say Mpesa receipt number, and I'm going to say we come all the way to the item. It's going to be the second thing inside this. So I say 2, no, it's supposed to be 1. Then it's also the value. So again, guys, this is a very simplistic way of doing the array deconstruction, where we are calling zeros and ones. Of course, the only problem with this is that if Safaricom decides to change the order of any one of these two things, we are going to get some serious errors. So in the dictionary calls, is pretty much straightforward, even if you interchange merchant request ID with this one. So let's say if we interchange that one, this comes second, this is still going to be correct because it's a dictionary. But when it comes to an array and you're calling by the index, of course, if Safaricom decides for some reason to maybe interchange these two like that, then we are going to get errors, because this one is going to come and call 0 amount. It's going to get this number instead. So towards the end of this video, or perhaps in the next video, I'll show you an easier way of using a for loop, where we can iterate through these values, and that becomes foolproof, such that even if they go and rearrange this information, you are not going to get an error. Okay, so that is done. So the next thing we need is the balance. In this case is going just to be blank, so we can even decide to skip it, but let's just do it because it's there. Balance, we said Safaricom is not going to give you the balance value. It's usually going to send the balance of your customer straight to that person via an SMS. It's not going to tell you that. So balance is going to be 2, and we get, there's no value, so I'm just going to leave it. So actually I'm just going to cancel this one out because we don't have a value for that. I can just maybe hard code it and say for now it's just going to be an empty string because we don't have, but I can take this one again, and we want the transaction date, so I'm going to come here and say transaction date, and so this one is going to be 3, not 2. So this is 1 2 3, so it's 1 2 3 4, so this is going to be 3, and of course we get the value. And finally we need to save the phone number, so I'm going to come here and say phone number, and so this should be 4. And just to test that every one of these works, so I'm going to come here and say paste that and say check that, and I also check this and I say phone number. I can also copy this one and come here, we make sure this is also a transaction date, so copy that and that, can copy this again. This is just to confirm when we go to our logs that this actually works. Okay, so I'm going to save this and I'm going to come here and I'm going to change, I don't remember changing the serializers. Let's see the changes. So it was just some formatting, but anyway I'm going to upload these two. I'm going to come here also and make sure that in the Daraja settings init is production, so that is okay. I'm going to close this, and so come back here and I'm going to put the message extracted values from request.data. I'm going to say okay, so that has been committed. Then I push to Heroku. As it does that, I'm going to come to the logs and make sure that everything is okay, so we can see the build has started. So what you're going to do is come and prepare our lipa na mpesa.py. Again, I'm going to send 1 shilling. Everything here is set as correctly, and we are going to run this function, so we wait for this to happen. So ideally what we should receive is a confirmation with this, of course with the request.data of the transaction that we've just made, plus also now the values that we've just set. Okay, so it seems that as if it's done. Come back here, build succeeded. So I'm going to come to lipa na mpesa.py and I'm going to control shift. Actually the account reference, let me just change and say, I can put anything here. I just want to show you guys that this is actually an updated version. So I'm going to say test data. Okay, control shift P, run Python file in terminal. If you can't see that, just type run. Okay, so it's opening up the terminal underneath. Wait for it to finish. We should get a success. And now I'm opening up my phone. I'm entering the pin. Okay, waiting for the response and the SMS. I've received a confirmation SMS, so let's wait for the response. Okay, so we get a response. I'm seeing here assertion error response. If that is correct, we are going to rectify this, and in our view here we've not returned anything, we're just printing out stuff. So but going up, let's see whether we've been able to extract. We've gotten the request.data, so can see here this is request.data. So this is the first print statement that we've put out here. So we are supposed to come and extract the merchant request ID and print it. So let's go back to the logs and see. So this should be merchant request ID. This should be the amount. Of course, we've sent 1 shilling. This should be Mpesa receipt number. This is the transaction date. This is the phone number. And this is, of course, this is my phone number. So far, everything that we've printed here up to the phone number, it works. Now, the only thing that is remaining is saving this data to our database. But it's not as simple as that. So in order to save, remember, coming back to our slides, so we've extracted this information more or less into something like this, not quite something like this, but we've extracted all this information. And now what you're supposed to do is now come and write the actual models, because we've done the URL, we've done the view. In between there's the serializer, but we need to write the model, and this model is what is going to enable us to write this information that we've just extracted into our database. So I'm going to open up the Django website. So come here and Google Django. Okay, go into django-rest-framework, just Google Django. Open up the first thing. I'm going to come to documentation. So once the documentation is open, come here and type fields. And come here and search for model field reference. So click on that one. So basically what model field reference is at least you see here there's on the right there's something called field types. You can click on it. So these are the various types of data that Django can save. So we have an autofield, a big autofield. So an autofield basically is an incremental data that you can have. So let's say, for example, you have a database where you want to save the admission number of students. So let's say admission 1, admission 2, admission 3. So basically it's going to increment each additional entrance to the database by 1. So again, here they're saying is increments according to available IDs. Although I never use this because the Django database in every entry usually have a primary key, which is basically better to use than an autofield. We have a big autofield, so this is similar to this, but it only deals with large numbers. So let's say if you had such big numbers, this is ideal. So let's say, for example, you wanted to save the national ID numbers of everyone in Kenya. So instead of using an autofield, you can use a big autofield. So it's going to be the same, it's a 64-bit integer, but it's going to increment the value by 1. The advantage with this is, of course, it is going to optimize the search for such large numbers when you're doing some searches. So big integer field, binary fields, you can go through these. We have a Boolean field, which is basically a yes or no. We have a char field, this is a character field, and this is what we'll be using majority of the time. Then we also have a date field. This is what we are going to use when we are saving dates. There's a DateTime field. The difference between a DateTime field and a date field only stores the date, the month, and the year. This one stores the time. So all the time that we've been extracting, for example, coming to our code, the data that we've here, you see here it includes the month, the year, the month, the day, the time. So we have a decimal field as well as other things like duration fields. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them, and email fields. We are just going to use majority of them in the course of the tutorial series. So coming back here, I'm going to come and open our models.py. So far we had written pass, not to have anything. But now I need to save all this information. So actually I'm going to copy everything here like that. And going to paste it up here like that. This is just so that I can be able to see the information. So the first thing we are going to have is a checkout request ID. So I'm going to copy this and say this is equals to, of course this is a models dot, this is a character field because it's a string, you can see it's a string. So char field, and with char field we must give one value, which is, it's called a maximum length. So I'm trying to tell Django that save the maximum length of this string, don't save anything that exceeds a certain limit. So when I highlight like this one, I can see that I have 37 characters selected. So I can just come here and say 40, or I can even say 50. So if you try to save something with more than this, it's going to reject. I mean, with more than 50 characters, it's going to reject. And with this one, you can call this anything you want. It doesn't have to be exactly as what Safaricom has given you. You can even write like check out whatever you want. You can literally write whatever you want. So I like just writing what Safaricom has given me. I'm going to say merchant request ID is equals to, and this is also a character. This is a character field because it's a string. You can see the quotations. So models dot, no, it's supposed to be character field. Again, max length of, so this one is around 15, so I can just say 20. I don't want to put the exact because I don't know if this changes or even this changes from Safaricom in terms of the length. The next thing we have is the result code, and this is usually either like a 0, a 1, or any other number. So the difference is that this is not a character field, but this is a integer field. Integer, these are full numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 without decimals. So I don't have to put anything. This does not have a max length. The other one is the result description. Again, these words here on the left, you can put whatever you want. I just do that for the sake of time. So this is a character field. So it's models dot character field, and you can see here, this is the message is usually 46, but sometimes they can have, if it's an error message, they are going to show you an error. So let me just put 120. Then we have the amount. So amount is equals to models dot, in amount they send with decimal, so shillings and cents. So this is going to be a float field. Okay, there's some additional settings that you can put here, maybe to say record up to the first decimal place or 2 decimal places if you have like a long number which has like 5 decimal places. For now, I'm just going to leave it like that. Then we have the Mpesa receipt number, and this is a string. So models dot character field, max length. Again, I don't know if the size of this string changes. If it's exactly, here it's 10, so if it's usually 10 throughout, you can just put max length of 10. But for safety reasons, because I don't know if the length changes, oops, I'm just going to put 15. Then we need the balance. This will always be blank v. So I'll say this is models dot character field. Oops, character field, and because it's usually blank, I'm going to put blank is equals to true. I'm also going to put null is equals to true. If you do not put this, then when you are saving the information, you don't give a balance, it's going to throw an error. So in order to receive blank, to make it blank, just put blank is equals to true, null is equals to true. So this means you can either save it with a value or not. So the other thing that we need to save is the transaction date. So this is where the trick is. So far, this transaction date that we've received is in form of is actually a number, and this is one of the places where I have majority of trouble with Safaricom, because instead of giving you like a string or an integer, you'll find, for example, now when you're doing lipa and Mpesa, this will be an integer, so it's technically a big integer field. But when we are doing other things, so let's say like B2C, you can find that perhaps is a string, in other instances is usually like something different. So for now, there are 2 ways we can do this. So instead of so this one, you can save it as a big integer field, but it's not going to help you a lot. And the other thing that we can do is that we can save it. We can save this as a datetime field. But in order to save this as a datetime field, we have to do some manipulation. So let me just for now come here and say this is going to be models dot datetime field, like that. And I'm going to say phone number is equals to models dot, this will be a character field, and I'm going to say max length is equals to, this one I'm sure it's going to be 13 because there's no phone number which will be longer than 13. Okay, so that is done. So but for now, before we save, we need to go and convert this into a datetime field. So I'm going to come back to my view, and again I need to delete everything here. I'm going to come back to my views. I can minimize this on the side like that so that we have space. So I need to convert the date. I need to convert the transaction date. So in order to do that, we need to do a few things. Again, do not worry too much about this formatting. For some reason, VS Code is formatting this way for me. So this can be one nice line. So to do that, I'm going to come and call this transaction date, and I need to convert this transaction date from an integer field to a string field, then to a date time. Remember in the previous example, when we were doing our keys, I believe, when we were doing our, let's see, lipa na Mpesa timestamp. So when we're doing timestamp was in utils. So I am going to come to utils. Remember in utils, we had a date time that we converted to a string using string format time. So in this case, we are going to do the reverse of this. Since we have a string format time, okay, technically is an integer field, so we are going to convert the big integer field that we've received the number into a string. Then from a string, we are going to do this backwards and get a date time. Cool. So in order to do this, I need to import date time from datetime, because remember also here in the utils, where is that file? Here in the utils, we imported from datetime, import datetime. So so it's from, sorry, that's a React Native syntax. It's confusing me day by day. So import datetime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I need to convert this the transaction date into a string. So I'm going to say string transaction date is equals to, I'm going to call the string function str, and you can read here that it creates a new string from the given object. So I'm going to convert this transaction date into a string. Cool. And just to show you that what is happening, I'm going to copy this, come here and say print this. Okay, then I need to convert this back to the datetime, but instead of now using the string format time, I'm going to say I'm going to call this I can't call it datetime because it's a keyword, so I'm going to call it transaction date time is equals to, so we have a function which is called datetime dot string p time. So previously we are using string format time, but now we need the string p time. So here we are converting a string to date time. Here we are converting a string from date time. Here is converting string to date time. So I'm going to write this, and similarly as last time, this takes in two things. Again, opening up the utils, I want to close it this time. Here we said formatted time is equals to unformatted time string format time. In this case, this one is going to take in two things. We are going to take in this which is the string transaction date, comma, comma, then we are going to say percentage y, percentage month, percentage date, then percentage capital H, percentage hours, minutes, and seconds. Perfect. I'm going to save that. Here in the utils files we did the same thing. So coming back to the view, so just to see if this works, I'm going to say here transaction date time, and this should be a transaction date time. Perfect. Now we head into the final part where we now need to save everything to the database. So to do this, I need to import this model. I need to import this, so I'm going to say from mpesa.models, which is mpesa folder.models here, and we have this. I'm going to say import that, then I'm going to say, okay, come back, I'm going to say x. I can call this anything I want. I can call it our model is equals to, so I'm going to say lipa na mpesa online dot objects dot create. This is the Django way of creating new models or new objects inside the models. And we are going to say, so this one we need a checkout request ID, so I'm going to copy checkout request ID. I'm going to say, and this must be exactly what you've written here. So I'm going to say, so we are saying go to mpesa.models, and we remember models is what we are going to use to save to the database, and say I want to create a new object instance of the model, and the value for the checkout request ID of that model, so this is equals to, so what is the value? We can give here directly the value. You can come and say 1 2 3 4 5 6, but in this case we've already had the value that we got from Safaricom, which is, again, we are saving checkout request ID, so we come here, this is the value that we obtained from Safaricom. So, and this is one of the reasons why here I wrote my own name, merchant request ID, so that you don't get confused. So we say comma. The second thing we need to the value for is merchant request ID, so I'm going to copy this, and this is equals to merchant request ID, and this value we've gotten up top here, merchant request ID. So the third thing we need here is result code, and I'm going to copy manual, and I'm going to say this is equals to the result code which we've obtained up. Where is it? It's here, and I'm going to do that for each and every one of them, so bear with me. Transaction date is equals to, so for transaction date we must put the final one we've received, which is transaction date time, because this is an actual date time. The other one we had received is a big integer field. Okay, so make sure you do that. Phone number, I think we had called it is equals to phone number. Okay, save this. So in order to save this, then we are going to come and say our model dot save. So that should be okay. There's one more thing that we need to do so that we see if this is saved. So when we registered our model, we need to show it in the Django admin. So if I come back here to Mysterious Oasis and I say open up, it opens and I say /admin. So we need to show this data here. So the way we do it is we come to this admin file. I'm going to say admin.site.register. Okay, remove that. And I'm going to import that. So I'm going to say from mpesa.models import lipa na mpesa, what is the name? Okay, to the admin, paste. going to paste this here, so that should work. So I come back to my models, this is okay. Come back to our views, this is okay. So before we migrate, we need to do one more thing. Remember, we said once we've created the model, we need to do some migrations once we edit this, and we've added it because we've added everything here. So I'm going to come here to the command prompt, make sure that your virtual environment is activated. Come to Daraja settings. In it, we need to put this to local because we need to do a few things, and we need to run migrations. So I'm going to maximize this and say Python manage.py make migrations. So here you'll say saying Mpesa balance character fields must have a max length attribute, and this is Mpesa lipa na Mpesa balance. So let's come back to the models balance. Oh, we need a max length, of course. So max length, I'm going to put is equals to 12 because nobody is saving more than 1,000,000 shillings anyway. Save that. Okay, run this again. So he's saying we are trying to add an nullable field amount to lipa na Mpesa online without a default. We can't do that. The database so needs to pre-populate existing rows. Please select to add a fix, provide a one-off default for now. So this is for amount. So this is because remember last time we did some migrations, and now we've come and say here we've come let's come to models and amount, and here we don't have a default for now. I can put a default value, then come and delete it afterwards, so I can say default. For now, because we had done the initial migrations, I'm going to say default is equals to 0. Okay, save this, make migrations, check out request ID. So it's saying this for everything. I'm going to copy this, check out request ID. Where is it? Let's see the error again. So we can provide a one-off for every one of them, or put a default. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put everything here as blank is equals to true, just for now. I can even put this. I'm going to put for this, I'm going to put for this, that one datetime field, I can put this blank, and I can put this blank. Again, this error is purely because we had put we had done migrations before, and so it's requiring like a default value. So even this, instead of saying default is equals to 0, I can put blank is equals to true. Of course, I'm going to come back again and delete most of this one. You can also come here and select an option and put if you select, let's say option 1, is going to say you enter the time zone. So I'm going to quit, say 2. Now this should work again. So this works again. This is one of the problems of working backwards. So then after that we do migrate. Migrate. So it has migrated. Now we need to push this to Heroku. So I'm going to come to the init file, make sure I've selected the production, and that one is off. And I'm going to come here and say make sure the migration files is here. So select everything. I can come to changes and literally select everything. I can say model save, confirm, and then I push this to Heroku. So I'm going to come here to the log files and make sure that everything is working. The build has been started. Again, one of the things that of course we expect to have an error on is on the views, because again here we are not returning everything. So as that saves, let me come here and open the Django-rest-framework. So I'm going to come here and say drf Django-rest-framework, and I'm going to search for response. Let's see. Okay, so I come here to response, so click response, and here is saying creating responses, so we need to return a response, and we say response, we need to return a response with data, with a status, with a template. In this case we don't have a template. Headers is none. In this case we don't want to return with a header, and content type we don't need. So this is the response structure that we need to return. But let's first come to this and make sure the build has finished. I'm going to refresh the admin just to make sure that here we see something Mpesa and lipa na Mpesa online. So here it's saying online because it's putting as a plural, and if we click on this one, so in saying relation Mpesa, lipa na Mpesa online does not exist. This is because we need to do migrations on the Heroku server. So I'm going to come here and say this is now the difference. We did python manage.py migrate on our local side. We need to do this on the server side. So I'm going to copy that, and instead I'm going to say Heroku run. I'm going to paste that command. So this is going to open up an instance of Heroku, and it's going now to do this applying. You should see a similar message to this, applying these migrations to our online server. Okay, working, running all migrations, done. Now if I come back here and now click this lipa na Mpesa online, we see we have no transactions that we've done, and we can even add a transaction here manually. So if I click on this one, I can come here and literally fill out all these values with something and click save. But of course we need Safaricom to fill in all this for us because we've extracted the values and do the save. So what I'm going to do is now come and do a transaction. So I'm going to come here, lipa na Mpesa. In this case, let me be dynamic and send 2 shillings so that is different from the other ones, and we say test Heroku, and I'm going to Control Shift P, run Python file in terminal. Success. I've received a prompt on my phone. I'm putting in the pin. It's sent. Okay, so let's come back here to dashboard, make sure that everything is okay. So we've received expected a response. Of course we've not done any response, so there's an error. But if we come here, we see everything is okay, everything is okay. Here is where we converted a string transaction date to a string from this integer, and you can see here now we have a date time. We've split this to an actual date time. Okay, and here we have this error, runtime warning, date time field, receive a naive date time. So this basically what a naive date time is, and we are going to rectify that, is that we've not put a time zone to our transaction. So for example, you can see here that the time here is 1926, yeah, and we can see they are saying that while time zone support is active. But if you see the server time here is 2019 0316, yeah. Then we have a T, meaning is time zone sensitive, and it's saying it's 1626, and here is 1926. So you can see there's a 3-hour discrepancy, and because we are in Nairobi and we know Nairobi is +3, so you can see the Safaricom has given us time in Kenyan time, but our server is running at UTC, because remember all servers and majority of even apps on your phone run on UTC. So we need to make our time zone aware, so we can convert it back to UTC time, or we can convert the entire of our server to Nairobi time. But I usually advise, let's just convert this time, this we've received from Safaricom, to sync with our server. But again, that's not a problem. So we don't know if so far we've printed up to the transaction date, which is coming back to the views, we've done up to here. So let's see if it has actually saved. So it was supposed to run this and save. So let's come to here, refresh, and voila, you see we now have something on our database. It's saying lipa na Mpesa online object. Okay, that's weird. We need to give we need to write some code to make this more readable. But if I click on this one, you'll see that the information that Safaricom, our transaction has been saved to our database. And now this, and you can see here the transaction date instead of the numbers that Safaricom gave us, because remember Safaricom gave us, let me close this one. Safaricom gave us time as a string. We've been able to successfully transform that into an actual date and an actual time. And on our database, of course, you can come and change this, but of course, we cannot do that because it's a transaction. Perfect. So we've seen how we can save this. So let us do some few cleanup. So let's make this a bit more readable. So there's two ways we can do that. One, we can come to our models, and here there's a function called define is __ string __, and basically what this does is it returns a string representation of our model. So what do we mean that? So I'm going to come and say return. I can return, for example, I can even put a string and say return. I can say, okay, first of all, this takes in self. I can use the new Python 3.7 or 3.6 syntax of F, formatting a string. I can say return, for example, what is important here. I can say phone number. So I can say, for example, this phone number has sent. I can say, actually this is supposed to be self dot, because we are referencing this, and I can say self dot amount, and I can even put like the receipt number. So I can say self dot Mpesa receipt number. So in a moment you'll see what this means. I can say save, and if I push this to, if I push just this to Heroku, and I can say string representation, okay, and push to Heroku. So that's one way. As it saves, there's another way we can do this to make our lipa and Mpesa online, I mean the values that we are receiving on our database to be more readable. And the other means is coming to our admin here, and we can customize our admin. So we can say class, I'm going to call it lipa and Mpesa online. Wait for the other one to finish saving. It's still saving. So lipa and Mpesa online, I'm going to call this admin. I'm going to say is admin dot, I think it's model admin. I'm going to say model, I'm going to say fields. It's not actually fields, it's list display, if I'm not wrong. List display is equals to, and I'm going to list all the fields I want to show. For now I just want to show the, perhaps just the phone number. Again, bear with me, this is going to make sense in just a second. Then I want to show, for example, the Mpesa receipt number, actually first of the amount, and I also want to show, again this we are customizing the admin, I want to show that, and perhaps the date. I'm going to call the transaction date. But before I push this, I believe the other one has finished. Let's come and refresh. So this is when we do the underscore string. So you realize it's going now to show +254, that's my phone number, has sent none. What have we said we are going to show in the string? It's supposed to be an amount, self.amount. Okay, that is weird because it's supposed to be 1. So let's see here, amount. So we didn't save the amount correctly, so I'm going to come here and check where I did the error in the views. It seems we are not saving the amount for some reason. Amount, this should be the amount. So when you're saving here, we are saying, oh okay, here, so here I've not saved the amount. So I'm going to come here and say amount is equals to amount. Okay, this is the nice thing about testing. But ideally, let's say if we had saved this as 1 shilling, so that was error on my side. You can see now +254 has sent 1 bob to, and this is the transaction, but this is not clean. This is not a very clean representation. So now if we come and save the admin, we've done this as the admin. I'm going to come and take this, and I say here, now I'm going to add this register. I'm saying register lipa na Mpesa online, but use this customization that we've said, lipa na Mpesa online admin, where we want to show this. Again, guys, just bear with me, this is going to make sense in a second. So I'm going to add these 2 files, and I say new model admin, push this to Heroku. As it pushes those changes, I'm going to come to my views. Here we said we must return a response, so I'm going to say return, and we saw in the that a response we need to return some data and a status, although we can do without the status. For now, I'm just going to return some data, and I'm going to return response. Of course, we need to import response, so this is takes that. And in a data, I'm going to return a dictionary, and in dictionary we usually have like key value pairs. So I'm going to say I can call it resort desk. I can call it resort desk. I can call this anything I want. So let me just call it our resort description. I'm going to say yay, it worked, like that. Okay, so we need to import a response. So I'm going to say from REST framework import. Let's see if it's there. It's not there. So let me just do a quick googling to see how we import that. Okay, let me do a final guess. I think it's from REST framework.response import response. It's actually here. Okay, now we also push these two. Also push these two Heroku. As it pushes, I think the other one has finished. So if I came here now and refresh this, we are going to see a much cleaner representation. And this is what we've done in the admin, where we've said come on to our admin, do a list display and put these fields. You can now see it's clean. Now if we have multiple transactions, you'll actually be able to see the person who sent, the amount that they sent, the Mpesa receipt number, and even the time. And with time, we are going to do a lot of things, like how we can sort this data, how we can show other sorting information. Okay, now we are almost done. We need to see if the final bid has pushed, because we need to solve that error. It's saying here build succeeded. So now let me do one final transaction. I'm going to come here to lipa na Mpesa, Control-Shift-P, as always, run. I've received a prompt. I'm saying putting the pin, it's okay. Send. Okay, come back here. You see now we've it has done everything and there's no error. And if we come now to this and refresh, bam, you know, this is our second transaction, and you can actually see we've just done that at 7:39, which is now. And if I click this, I can come and see, okay, you know, the service request was processed successfully. Of course, the date is right now, and that's my phone number. And yes, so now everything is okay. We've just seen how we can now come and do transactions and actually receive them and save them on our database straight from the Daraja API. Of course, there's one more error that we need to sort out, and this is the error of Here we are getting time zone support is active. It's saying a runtime warning, and again this we are going to do this in the course of time, but basically what we need to do is just to come here and make this time zone aware. So one of the ways that you can do about it, actually let us just do this and get over with, is come to the views. These here transaction date. So after converting this, there's one module called pyths. If you come to requirements.txt, when we initially installed, you can see there's this package that was installed with Django initially, which is called just call it pyths. I don't know, some people call it pytz. Basically it's Python time zone package, just call it pyths. So I can import pyths, and the way you do it, there's two ways of solving this. The way I like doing it is, okay, first of all I'm going to take this up there because it's there. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it aware date time or transaction. I'm just going to call it aware transaction date time. So I'm going to call it Python time zone dot. So there's two things you can do. Yeah, if you say time zone is going to list like time zone you are in, so you can say, for example, so I'm going to call UTC, because remember we've said we are going to use UTC time and not Kenyan time, because we need to synchronize things to our server. So then I say localize, and I'm going to call this transaction date time that we have. So now if I come copy this and paste this here, I'm going to call this. So basically what I've done is now make our time zone aware, I mean make our transaction date time aware after conversion. And now instead of here transaction date to be this, I'm going to replace that with that. I'm going to come back here, I'm going to save these views. I'm going to call this aware date time. Okay, misspelled that, but it's okay. Then I'm going to push this to Heroku, and this should be the last thing that we are doing. But so far so good. All our transactions are working, and we are able now to save the data to Daraja. Okay, so waiting for it to finish. Come back here. So we are trying now to solve this is the error that technically is not an error, it's just giving us a warning. It's saving, but it's just telling us, hey guys, we are using a naive datetime and we need to put a time zone aware datetime. So it's opening up our Unicorn Daraja Whiskey. Build succeeded. Just refresh this to make it work, just to see if everything is okay. So I'm going to come back here to lipa na Mpesa. I'm going to change this back to, let me make 3 shillings so that we see it's different. I'm going to say now is test aware. Okay, so I'm going to Control Shift P, and I'm going to run this Python file in terminal. Okay, I see success, waiting for the prompt on my phone. I've received it, I'm putting in my PIN. Okay, send. Waiting for a response from Safaricom. I've received it, okay, on my SMS, and here we can see that is working all the way down, and now we don't have the error. And if we come now to refresh this, you can see I've just sent 3 shillings. Right now is, so here the error we are going to receive, of course, is going to say it has saved this as 10:45 p.m., which is 3 hours from now, because right now is 7:46 p.m. Down the line we are going to do some manipulation of now converting these to Kenyan time so that they both synchronize. Again, the problem here is that Safaricom gave us a big integer field, so we had to do all these transactions, but the previous ones were correct. So we are going to write a function that returns this back to Kenyan time, but to make it time zone aware. Cool. So coming back to the slides, you can see that we've been able to successfully extract this information as well as do our models and push that to our server and save it to the database. So in the next video, we're now going to continue from there and perhaps look at C2B, do a similar workflow of where we simulate a transaction from somebody's SIM card to lipa na Mpesa, and also maybe do something like B2C and save all those transactions to our online Heroku server. Again, as always guys, if you're finding me for the first time, make sure to subscribe to my channel as well as follow me on the various social media platforms, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.